A second shipment of medical supplies from China arrived in Argentina on Monday to assist the efforts against the COVID-19 pandemic. US oil prices have turned negative for the first time in history as demand dries up in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. The United Nations Children's Fund appealed on Monday for an additional $92.4 million to help fight the coronavirus in the Middle East and North Africa. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. A second shipment of medical supplies from China arrived in Argentina on Monday to assist in combating the COVID-19 pandemic. The cargo includes personal protective equipment for health personnel, including face masks and COVID-19 test kits. This initiative forms part of the efforts by the governments of Argentina and China to contain the spread of the coronavirus. The Argentinian government announced that it will extend the airlift established with China to continue this international cooperation. To date, Argentina has reported 2,941 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 36 deaths, while 737 patients have recovered from the virus. Speaking in a Telesur interview, Argentinian journalist Carlos Aznares stressed that the Argentinian population is grateful to China for its cooperation and assistance to combat the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Argentinian people see this in a very good light. Of course, there are recalcitrant right-wing extremists who, when they found out that it was China or Cuba who were helping, as usually happens, that the governments of Venezuela, Cuba or China, which have socialist or revolutionary governments or processes, and which have thought more about the people than about the market. These are the governments that are helping us, and in that sense, the Argentinian people have seen it with great satisfaction. We have to unite all nations in the midst of this tragedy, so that it is somehow clear that where imperialism, capitalism, and neoliberalism rule, things are bad, as in the United States or in England, and where there are people's governments, tragedy strikes, but the people have self-protection measures. This is what we Argentinians are viewing with this assistance from the Chinese people and the government.
The government of El Salvador has established a quarantine in the capital city as part of the preventative measures against the novel coronavirus. The measure establishes the closure of multiple streets in the center of San Salvador. Local authorities indicate that the initiative seeks to stop the spread of the coronavirus by restricting the movement of residents in the capital. Police and troops will guarantee compliance with the quarantine that will last 48 hours. So far, the Department of San Salvador has reported 63 of the 218 confirmed COVID-19 cases in the country, which has seen 7 deaths, while 46 patients have recovered from the virus.
Yesterday, at the meeting of our Municipal Civil Protection Committee and accompanied by authorities of the central government, we decided to establish this cordon sanitaire in the center of San Salvador, which includes approximately 400 urban blocks, and which will help with the containment and prevention of new cases of COVID-19 in our country. We have coordinated this quarantine directly through talks with the President of the Republic, who has made available 100 officers of the National Civil Police, plus troops of the armed forces, who will support the Metropolitan Corps with logistics and coordinations of the efforts to make this work.
Latin America exceeded 100,000 COVID-19 cases this Sunday, while the death toll stood at almost 5,000, according to official data collected by several international agencies. Brazil, with a population of 210 million, is the country most affected by the pandemic in the region, accounting for 39,548 cases. Peru remains in second place with more than 16,000 positive cases, while over 400 people have died. Chile ranks third in Latin America with over 10,500 confirmed cases and 139 deaths among its more than 18 million inhabitants. Meanwhile, Ecuador, one of the most affected countries in the region, with an official tally of over 9,000 cases and more than 400 deaths, has seen widespread claims of a lack of testing and reporting of the real numbers. And our correspondent in Brazil, Brian Meir, brings us more on the coronavirus epidemic there.
For over 2 months now, since the coronavirus pandemic first arrived in Brazil, far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has been flagrantly disobeying World Health Organization guidelines and going out every Saturday and Sunday to visit areas where crowds have gathered, markets, bakeries, places on the street where people are selling food, in the city of Brasilia, as he urges his followers to disobey the state governor's quarantine orders. Yesterday was no different. The far-right president visited a small protest in front of the National Army headquarters, where some 300 far-right protesters had gathered in a call for the government to shut down the Supreme Court and Congress in memory of Institutional Act 5. AI 5, as it was called, took place in December 1968, when the military dictatorship made a move to shut down Congress and deny Brazilian citizens the right to habeas corpus. Brazilian journalists, however, were quick to note that during Bolsonaro's speech to his followers, he was coughing frequently, he looked tired and weak. As he becomes more and more isolated politically, this act has been interpreted as an act of desperation, appealing to his ever-shrinking far-right base.
More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. US oil prices have turned negative for the first time in history as demand dries up in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. This means that oil producers are now paying buyers to take the commodity off their hands over fears that storage capacity could run out in May. The coronavirus lockdowns across the world have meant demand for oil has plummeted. As a result, oil firms have resorted to renting tankers to store the surplus supply, forcing the price of US oil into negative territory. The price of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate, the benchmark for US oil, fell from around $18 to as low as minus $37.63 a barrel on Monday, down over 300% from the previous day's close. The collapse in oil markets comes amid a generalized economic downturn, and many analysts believe that the recession sparked by the coronavirus pandemic in most of the world's economies will be the deepest since the Great Depression of 1930s. And more than 777,000 people have been infected with the novel coronavirus in the United States, and at least 41,000 people have died, according to Johns Hopkins University. Governors across the country this Sunday denied the Trump administration's claims that states are conducting a sufficient level of coronavirus testing. Public health experts have said testing would need to at least double or even triple to allow even a partial reopening of the US economy. Hundreds of people, including lawmakers, gathered in Pennsylvania to protest the measures urging much of the population to stay at home during the coronavirus pandemic. The Patriots Rally demonstration in the state capital of Harrisburg followed similar protests across the US this weekend in Michigan, California and Ohio, boosted by President Donald Trump's support.
And the recovery rate, they said, is about 98%. And well, why are you shutting down the world over this? This is craziness. It's crazy. People will starve. They'll commit suicide. They'll lose everything over this. I mean, the cure, like Trump said, the cure cannot be worse than the disease.
We just think that teaching our grandchildren that a government by the people, for the people, is very important, and you need to protest when you feel the government is overstepping their boundaries.
China called for the international community to remain united on Monday rather than blaming each other for the coronavirus pandemic, following comments by US President Donald Trump that his government was investigating whether the novel coronavirus originated in a lab in Wuhan.
Some people in the United States must understand that their enemy is the virus, not China. The international community can overcome the virus only if it can stay united and cooperative. To make concerted efforts, attacking and discrediting other countries simply cannot save the wasted time and lost lives. Our performance and contribution have been widely commended by the international community. Any question about China's transparency in epidemic prevention and control is neither in line with the facts, but also disrespectful of the Chinese people's tremendous efforts and sacrifices to prevent and control the epidemic.
The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, insisted on Monday that the UN agency has not concealed any information it had about the coronavirus pandemic from the United States.
But at the same time, having CDC staff means there is nothing hidden from the US from day one, because these are Americans who are working with us, and it just comes naturally, and they just tell what they're doing. And for WHO, it's open. We don't hide anything. It's open. Not only for CDC.
Meanwhile, the number of daily COVID-19 deaths registered in Spain fell to 399, representing the lowest figure since March 22nd, according to latest health ministry figures.
Today we have a total of 2,881 new cases. This is the first time in a long time that we've gone below 3,000 cases. Furthermore, this figure is also supported by figures from hospitalizations, intensive care admissions and deaths. Today, for the first time, we have dropped below 400 deaths. It is true that 399 deaths is a little bit below that, but these are marks that give us hope, despite the fact that we are still talking about people who have died. They give us hope. These 399 deaths represent an increase of 2% since yesterday, which is also a continuous decrease in recent weeks.
Germany began allowing small shops and businesses to reopen on Monday, although strict social distancing rules remain in place. Germany's health minister said authorities would be keeping a very close eye on any changes in the course of the coronavirus epidemic as they embark on a plan to slowly relax some lockdown restrictions across the country. Germany has confirmed more than 146,000 coronavirus cases and reported more than 4,700 deaths. However, the mortality rate has been significantly lower than in countries with comparable case figures due to the response capacity of its health system and widespread testing. Russian President Vladimir Putin stated on Monday that the measures adopted in the country had slowed the lockdown if medical experts ruled that it was safe. As of Monday, Russia had reported over 47,000 confirmed cases and more than 400 COVID-19 fatalities.
In general, we managed to accomplish the tasks of the first stage of the fight with the coronavirus infection. We managed to slow down its outbreak. However, it should not calm us down. The experts, you and your colleagues, say that the peak of the infection is yet to come. We have to do everything to edge the peak, to shorten the period of plateau, when the maximum number of infections is diagnosed. I reiterate, we should focus on the essential, that is the protection of people's life and health. We should allow secure functioning of some enterprises only under ruling of experts.
And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations Children's Fund appealed on Monday for an additional $92.4 million to help fight the coronavirus in the Middle East and North Africa, a conflict-torn region with the highest number of children in need. According to Unicef Regional Director Ted Chaban, the additional funding is needed for a range of programs across the region to soften the blow of the pandemic. Yemen is a top concern, according to Chaban, as after 5 years of civil war, half of its health centres no longer operate and 2 million children are malnourished, including 400,000 under the age of 5 who are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. So far, there has only been one confirmed coronavirus patient in Yemen, but testing capacities are limited and there are concerns the virus might be spreading undetected. More than 218,000 cases have been reported across the Middle East, including close to 8,000 deaths, the vast majority in Iran.
The Middle East for UNICEF was already the place where 50% of our global humanitarian action was taking place. because of conflict, because of drought and climate change. We have 25 million children in the region in need of humanitarian assistance, so there was already a vulnerability. And now COVID-19 comes on top of that vulnerability in places like Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Sudan.
The central market of Ouagadougou, capital of Burkina Faso, has reopened almost a month after its closure due to the coronavirus, to the great relief of traders.
The informal economy in our country accounts for 49% of our GDP and more than 90% of Burkinabe work in this sector. It also has a social character. Statistics show that Ouagadougou has 3 million inhabitants, with about 500,000 households. So reopening Ruduwoko is enabling these households to live with dignity without falling into precariousness and deprivation. Our behavior here is decisive. It is decisive because it allows us to learn. It allows us to gradually open up other markets. It will allow us to work towards the resumption of transport activities. It will soon allow us to work towards the resumption of activities in the streets and stations. And it will therefore allow us, if we manage to overcome the disease very quickly, to lift the other measures. The opening up of the market must not be allowed to become a black spot in this process, which has already begun.
Kenya is not just facing the coronavirus pandemic and huge swarms of locusts, but has now also been hit by flash floods that have left thousands displaced across the country. At least 4 people were reported dead after heavy rains pounded parts of Kenya. Rift Valley Regional Commissioner George Natembeam informed this Monday that 23 people were also missing after rains caused a river to burst its banks. Local volunteers and rescue workers continue to search for the dead and missing on Sunday and Monday morning, as well as lifting out livestock stuck deep in the mud. The town of Chesogun was totally submerged by the flash floods, leaving over 400 families homeless. A local boarding school in the area was among the buildings totally destroyed. Usually home to hundreds of children, the school was empty, having been closed earlier this month due to the coronavirus outbreak.
23 people cannot be traced. Those are the ones we are searching for. Their families have come forward to report that they are missing, and we have found many injured that have been taken to the hospital for treatment.
At least 5 women and children died in a stampede in the town of Gamburu, Nigeria, as a crowd of displaced people rushed to receive aid. The town of Gamburu, near the border with Cameroon, is a region hit by jihadist violence. Thousands of women had gathered at a primary school for handouts of $13 and clothing supplied by Borno State Governor Babagana Umaru Sulum, leading to the stampede, which also saw many people injured and taken to local hospitals, according to Umar Kachala, who heads a local anti-jihadist militia force. India has eased the coronavirus lockdown for the agriculture and manufacturing sectors in order to support the economy, but many businesses remain shut as COVID-19 cases continue to rise. Some shops and businesses opened in rural India on Monday as part of a staggered exit from a month-long lockdown that has left millions out of work and short of food. India's population of 1.3 billion has been under one of the world's toughest lockdowns, with people forbidden from stepping out of their homes except for food and medicines until May 3rd. However, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government said some activities, including manufacturing and farming, would be allowed from Monday in areas that have been less hard hit by COVID-19. India has reported more than 17,000 coronavirus cases and 559 fatalities.
They can't leave the lockdown now because the virus will spread as people start working. The only reason farmers are now allowed to work is because if we don't work, then the public will have nothing to eat. We first thought that on March 16 the lockdown would end, but it didn't. And then we were told that on April the 20th some sectors would open up. But the reality is different. Now, what can we do? We can earn money only if we are allowed to work.
Myanmar shipped hundreds of recently released Rohingya inmates back to the country's western borderlands on Monday after fears that its overcrowded prisons could become hotbeds for novel coronavirus outbreaks. Men, women and children belonging to the stateless and long persecuted Muslim minority were among the nearly 25,000 prisoners freed last week by presidential pardon to mark the country's April New Year celebrations. Myanmar's biggest prisoner release in years came as coronavirus fears gripped the country. Only 111 confirmed COVID-19 cases have been reported, but experts feel the real number is many times higher because of the lack of testing and the country's chronically underfunded healthcare system. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad met on Monday with Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif on a one-day visit to the war-torn country. Zarif held separate meetings with the Syrian President and Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Walid al-Mualem. He also thanked Syrian representatives for having participated in the funeral procession for Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, who was assassinated by the US in Iraq. President al-Assad expressed condolences for those who have lost their lives to the coronavirus in Iran, where the COVID-19 death toll has surpassed 5,200. Referring to the role of General Soleimani in the fight against terrorism in Syria, al-Assad thanked Iran for standing by the people of Syria. Egypt has enforced a strict lockdown to curb the novel coronavirus, having confirmed over 3,000 cases and 250 deaths. Meanwhile, Muslims across the Middle East are bracing for a bleak month of Ramadan fasting as the threat of COVID-19 pandemic lingers.
We've lost our joy this year because of the coronavirus. We are used to celebrating every year and feeling joy. But this year, we do not feel the joy of Ramadan because of the coronavirus. It's given me anxiety.
Of course, this virus affects Ramadan this year, but Egyptians do not care about it. Some are still going to buy lanterns. But of course, after the city goes under curfew, none of the light decorations will remain lit in the streets. It's not like every year. We cannot go out after iftar. All of this affects us, but generally people still care and go to the streets for Ramadan shopping.
Nigerian singer-songwriter Burna Boy was one of the African artists who joined the One World Together at Home global online concert on Saturday to raise funds for the World Health Organization's Coronavirus Relief Fund. And we finished this news brief with clips of his performance. Remember that you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, as well as on our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching and enjoy the music.
Let me down. Let me down. Tell Africa we don't die. So here comes the African giant. Many people don't try. But you can't test the African giant. Give me your logo. You know get the person when you know, making them loco. Oh no, make you know they do like good. Can nobody do it better than me. Can nobody do it better. Jackamanti, I know say one day you go better. Go carry Grammy, because anything way better require planning. Don't be, nothing you can do, because God did no go give you more than you can undo. That's so them mama go hala, baby. That's so them papa go hala, baby. Obodo de nu go chim chim. Obodo de nu go chim chim. Obodo de nu go chim chim. Eleli get yeah. Obodo de nu go chim. Obodo de nu go chim chim. Obodo de nu go chim chim. Eleli get yeah. Tell them Africa we don't die. So here comes the African giant. Many people don't try, yeah. But you can't test the African giant. It's been long, it's true, since I had a talk with you. So I had to take this time to be alone with you. Because all my blessings come from you. Hey. All my life I done follow you. Now I'm caught up in the money and the fame, but you still bless me anyway. May I forgive the most I praise for the air I breathe, for for the papers and trees. Hey, hey. Me have to give the most I breathe. Yeah, for the air I breathe. Oh, for the rivers and trees. And that's what me sing, hallelujah, hallelujah.